My guest today is Iona Fyfe. Iona is a young Scottish folk singer, mainly known for singing in the Scots language. We talk about the history of the language, we talk about some of the people that have inspired her, and we also talk about navigating the choppy waters of having Scots recognised as an official Scottish language. I hope you enjoy this interview. I found it absolutely fascinating to talk to Iona. Hi Iona.
Hi.
So welcome and thanks for joining me. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I think we met through Twitter and we started talking because I came across a recording of yours of Come Away From My Window. And I think we had a discussion with about the origins of that song and its meaning and so on.
Yeah, it's lovely to be talking to you and finally meeting you and just sharing our interest in folk music and the universalism. It's cool.
Yeah. I mean, your album Come Away From My Window is obviously it's a very traditional thing, and I think that's quite unusual for a person who's still quite young and who's still of a generation probably behind what many people in the folk scene are. Did you find any of that? Did you find that awkward, where having to suddenly be in that tradition and record these very traditional songs as a young person?
It was just so natural because since I was like maybe 10 or 11, I was performing traditional songs in live situations, whether that be at folk clubs or sing-arounds or competitions or folk festivals. So by the time I was 18 or 19, starting on the first album, I felt really ready for it. I felt like I was like, I've paid my dues, I've done my research, I was in the middle of doing my degree in traditional song. Like I felt ready. I didn't feel like I was too young. Even though some older traditional singers told me you are too young, I totally just ignored that. However, when it did come to actually arranging the tracks and putting them down in the studio, I kind of freaked out a bit because I was like, oh no, what if I'm disrespecting tradition, and what if people think I'm too contemporary, and what if people think I'm too traditional, and where's my place in all this? And every single detail, like every decision I made, I like probably double backtracked on it, and it became a total labor. Not so much a labor of love, just a labor. But a lot of thought went into it, and it took 2 years to make, and it was released at Kettle Connections, and I toured it for quite a long time, using the samples live as well, so introducing people to singers such as Stanley Robertson and Lizzie Higgins. So I feel like I gave it a good go, but I wanted to do something fresh, and the Dark Turn of Mind EP was exactly that. It was my first time singing in English. It was picked up by way more publications and magazines and radio than Away From My Window did, which is really sad because Away From My Window was in Scots and was in Doric with a few songs in English, whereas the Dark Turn of Mind one, it just felt like so much easier to do because I wasn't constantly fretting about disrespecting tradition or my authenticity or integrity and all that. And it's really sad because I really enjoyed making Dark Turn of Mind much, much more because I felt it was just more easy ozy. It was chilled out. I was enjoying, working with the people I was working with. We did it in Graham Rory's flat. It was just a much nicer, chilled, laid back thing. There wasn't deadlines. It was just, we made it in 4 weeks anyway, because I needed it to tour when I went to Austria. But it was such a lovely thing to do. And all of the songs somehow fitted in with what I was it was the same tree I was barking up, but I was just doing it in English. And the songs are still traditional. Some of the ballads like Matty Groves, that's like super traditional anyway. Or Little Musgraves, like Jeannie Robertson sung that. I don't think it was a full 180 or 360 I did. I feel like it was just exploring something and showing everyone, because I have been singing for so long. I think a lot of people in Glasgow or even in the Northeast think that I'm like a one-trick pony. I can just do one thing, sing in Doric, do a bothy ballad, do a ballad, fine, that's it. And I feel like Dark Turn of Mind allowed me to have the space to prove that I can maybe do something a wee bit different and not rock the boat.
Yeah, for me, that Dark Turn of Mind EP, the EP that you've made, which I'm sure it's still available, and it's got a very vibey feel. It's you can tell that you're enjoying it, that you're really loving it, and that you are. It feels like you're expanding into something that you feel very comfortable in, and you're recovering the amazing Gillian Welsh for one thing. And did you? As you said, it felt more relaxed in doing it.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the whole thing like happened within 5 weeks. And I called Graham Rory and I said, "Oh, can you like record this, or can you?" And he also produced it effectively, because kind of his input was becoming more and more. That I was like, you know what, you're effectively producing this. But the people that I was working with, we we had like a few rehearsal days, and that was grand. But then when we were laying it, we were all never there at the same time, but yet it still worked out good. And I think that's because of the sheer musicianship of the people that I have had the privilege of getting to work alongside, like Rory Matheson. He's a piano player from Ashen in the Highlands, and Aidan Moody, of course, and Graham Rory of Nos. And it was just those three. It was a much more chilled out, less, the Away From My Window thing. There's so many musicians that play on that because it took part, 2 years in the making, and things changed, and yeah. But the Dark Tower of Mine thing was so just, not quick and easy. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to say it was more like less of a labour and more of a love, which is much nicer when you're trying to create something, and it shows probably, hopefully.
Yeah, you definitely feel it. Not that I think there's anything at all wrong with "Come Away From My Window." I absolutely love it. It's and that in itself is an amazing song, and I do love the way that you use that sample of Stanley Robertson before before the song starts and so on. Was he one of the people that taught you a lot in the folk scene?
Well, because I'm 22, I had never met him in person.
Yeah.
I think he died in 2009. So there's a good chance that maybe we were at the same festival, but I would have been too young to kind of understand who it was. Just like, I think I met a lot of people when I was younger, and I didn't realize the significance of their work and their songs and their their scholarship until much, much later. So I really took for granted the people that I met who would then go and encourage me and all that. But I never met Stanley. But I mean, there's Kiss to Riches, there's online archives. I mean, a lot of the people I did meet had anecdotes about the Elphinstone Institute in Aberdeen allowed me to like go in and kind of search through all of their archives, like recordings of him, and there was heaps and heaps of basically workshops that he would do. He was more of a storyteller than a singer, I'd say. He played pipes as well, but I would say, like, in terms of like singing goes, he was definitely more comfortable doing like a storyteller type thing. I mean, it goes for a lot of these kind of singers from that generation. It was about the story as opposed to like how pretty the song sounded. I mean, some of them couldn't keep melodies in plastic bags, but that is fine because it wasn't about how pretty the voice sounded. It was about how you get the story across, and that was the exact phrase that, of course, Stanley kind of uses in the kind of sample that I use. And I spent ages trying to find that. Because I knew that he said it, because Janice Clark, who was kind of taught by him, had taught a workshop to me, and she had these lines and she was kind of quoting it, and I thought, oh, that's great. So I knew that he said, I knew the sample that I was trying to find, but it literally, I spent days in the archives like listening to it, and I found it at the last minute, like literally. If I just started the other way around, I would have taken 2 minutes to find what I needed. But yeah, I think that's quite important. I mean, effectively, it ruled out any sort of radio play for that song and for Bonnie Udney. But I didn't really care. I was like, you know what, this is more about, I feel like this is not a folklore type thing, but I think it's more about preserving their voices than highlighting mine. And that, for those two tracks, I think that I was quite happy just to make a 7-minute long Bonnie Udney, just to have Lizzie Higgins sing a minute of it.
Right.
Like, yeah, I think that was cool.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mention, like searching through the archives and all of this. I think many people who get involved in traditional music end up geeking out and going and looking up things and finding out all that kind of stuff. And in the end, uh, you actually studied. You said you mentioned you were doing a degree, and you did that in traditional music, right?
Yeah, I when I was in Huntley, I was like 16, and I was really, really keen on politics because it was just when the referendum had happened, and I was like so, riled up about politics. I was thinking, you know what, maybe I'll apply and do politics at like Aberdeen University or something, like a degree like that. And then the auditions came around for the Conservatoire, for the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, because they do a degree in Bachelor of Music in Traditional Music, an honours degree, and you can be, you can have a principal study Scots song. And I thought that seems like such. Is that a degree? Really? Really? You can do a degree in Scots song? Yeah, it's not recognised as a language. So I decided to audition and I got in, but I would have to wait until I was 17 the following year to go. So there was a huge wait between auditioning and actually going because of the age that you have to be to go, and also when the term starts. So I decided to go. I got a place, and I thought I can't defer it because they might not let me in again, because you can't tend to defer conservatoire places because each year it's a different cohort. So I just went, and studying it gave me, I got to meet and work with the likes of Margaret Bennett, who is probably one of the leading folklorists in the world, I'd say. Not a performer, yes, herself, but mostly a folklorist. I mean, she's written more books than I've probably read. And I think I met lots of people at the Conservatoire, and collaborated with my fellow like peers, people in my year or my class or whatever. But I think a lot of the learning and research was done of my own volition because I was really, really interested in my own identity and where I came from and these ballads. And I think that you can go to a fancy schmancy university, that's fine, but if you're not working in the field, then you're not really going to get much out of it. It's more like what you put in, you get out. So a lot of my learning in my third and fourth year was done on the back of buses. I was like Skyping into class. I missed a lot of class, a lot of it. But I was working. Like, I wasn't skiving off because I was out on the lash the night before. I was skiving because I wasn't in the country. But if I was in the country, then I'd be at class. I'd 100% be there. But yeah, I think it was cool because it gave me 4 years to really figure out what it was I wanted to say or do or perform. But I also don't think that you need to go there. Like, there's a lot of younger singers who are reaching out and saying, oh, what do you think about this and that? And I say, yeah, it's great. If you can get in, then go, that's fine. But don't worry if not, because I'm sure you can do exactly the same if you just research of your own volition. Go to sing-arounds, attend song conferences, attend like ballad scholarship, conferences, and you'll learn probably the same amount. And it's just this idea that you can do this on your own volition. And also, going to university is all different for everyone else. It was amazing because I got taught by like Rod Patterson and Fiona Hunter, but I don't. There was a review somewhere. It was in German, and when it translated, it was like, effectively, it was like, is she talented or is it because of her elitist education? So it wasn't elitist. I never paid for it. I got in off my own merit. Yes, some of the people who went there had more money than I did. So I came from a working class background. But like, I would have loved to have written to that reviewer and said, everything I've done, I've worked for, I've fought for really, really hard. Just because I went to the conservatoire and I didn't even, most of the time I probably wasn't in class because I was working or whatever. It kind of felt sad, like that detracted from the work that I did. So if I had the chance, I would have. I think it's too late now because the review's ancient, but I should have written back being like, no, yes, it might be an elitist establishment, but I went there off my own merit and I worked hard. And just because I attended there doesn't mean that it detracts from any of the work that I've done, because where I come from and where I'm at is two very separate things. And like, I feel like people don't have background, like who you are as a person. Like growing up in a working class area with like a single parent, like I worked hard, and for someone just to write a review saying, oh well, you went to this elitist university, so it must be because you went there and not because you're talented, it like incensed a rage in me, like a pure rage. But I'm over it now. It's all good. It's all good.
I can understand that. I mean, that's something that's so, it's such a prevalent thing, unfortunately, that people think, I was talking with Nancy Kerr in an earlier interview, and I had a wonderful conversation with Nancy just about everything in the world. But one of the things that she came up with, it was one of my favorite lines from the interview, was she said, well, there's this attitude that sometimes people are saying, like, you sing a song about a plowman and they're like, well, you're not a plowman, so shut up. And, and there's this elitist thing where people think like, well, you don't know this, or you don't know that, or you haven't got this experience, and so how can you do that?
It's almost background snobbery. Like,
yeah,
a lot of these bothy ballads that I sing are prevalent, mostly men sing them. Like, the bothy ballad scene is like a male-dominated thing, because historically the songs were sung by single young men who worked on the farm, who lived in bothy sheds, which gave way to the word bothy ballad. So if I sing one, a lot of the time I feel like an imposter. But then if I look at my own history, my great-grandfather was the Grieve of Broadlands Farm, which was like one of the most famous farms in the northeast of Scotland. That song is in my lineage and my heritage. So just because I've never worked on a farm, I've never grown up in a farm, I've lived in Huntly Town, which is not big, but not small. And then I moved to Glasgow. I'm not that far, removed from that farm, when people in my ancestry literally were like the top of the farm. And it really annoys me when people are like, oh, young female singer singing about farming, what does she know? Well, the answer is not very much, but my family did know more.
Yeah, and that's why I think to be honest, sometimes I've mentioned this with other guests as well, is that that there is this kind of impression of people, especially if you go to folk clubs, of just a bunch of old guys with beards singing about whatever that's not relevant, but when you actually look inside the songs, when you actually do your research like you've done, you start to see like so much real beauty and history and so many interesting things there, that I think it's important that, and I wish people would be more encouraging of the younger generation to actually do that.
And it's not like they're synthetically attaching themselves to the tradition, because you can come in at two angles, like be brought up amongst it or come in from it, and both are completely and utterly relevant, and you credit both of them, and that is totally fine. But I think it's definitely an ageism thing. Like, she's young, what does she know about XYZ? And yeah, I do feel far removed from the farming thing. That is right, whatever, because I've never worked on a farm, that's fine. But if you look into parish records, you realise that the people in these songs, in the bothy ballads, they actually did exist. Like, they're real people that lived on the land and lived in the area that I grew up in. So I feel like connected to it in that way. But saying that, even in like some protest songs, like, feel uncomfortable singing them sometimes, because people will be like, young female singer, what does she know? Again. And like, but they don't realize the backstory, and like they don't understand like my personal experience, like my lived experience in which I am singing these songs in the context of. And I'm just like, it's so tiring. But yeah, certainly the folk club thing is, I would like it to be much, much more, not young, but I just like the younger generation to get involved. But also, if you notice now, younger generations tend not to be like promoters. I don't know any like person that's like 24 and below that only promote. I feel like some musicians do it. They'll maybe run a folk club or something. There's been schemes in Scotland by Hands Up for Trad, which has encouraged young musicians to like start folk clubs or start concert series. But I feel like the atypical folk club promoter is not, you know, 24. They've been doing it for like quite a long time.
Yeah.
And some of the time their views are very outdated. Like I remember calling one folk club up when I was maybe like 19, maybe 20. Can't remember. But I called them up because there wasn't an email on the website. So that was like, they put the number there. That was totally fine. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be in this area at this time. I'm a young singer. I'm from Aberdeenshire. I live in Glasgow, just away to graduate soon. Can I come do like a support at your folk club? I know you have a gig on this day. Or can I do like even a floor spot? I'm going to be in this area anyway. And like, instead of just being like, yeah, sure, I'll give you a chance. Like, let's, I'll look you up. I'll look at something online. Have you got some recordings online? This guy, I'm not going to say names, was like, I've never seen you live, and I only book people that I see live. And I was like, well, you know what? I am getting around. I at that point I'd toured in Germany, Austria, like I've been to Poland, I'd been abroad, quite a lot. Over to Canada as well. I was like, you might not see me in south of England a lot. That's because most of my work is in Europe and abroad because I've worked hard to get that. If you would just look online at a video of me, you'd figure out what I'm about. And he was like, sorry, I only book people that I see live. I was like, well, you know what? You've missed out. Whatever.
Yeah.
But at the time I was kind of upset. I was like, he actually said to me, oh, so what have you won? Have you won like an award or something? Have you won like what is it that you've won? I was like, as a matter of fact, I have won something, but I don't think that that defines me as a musician. I don't think it defines what I do and what I can bring to an evening of music. So I'm not going to discuss this. I don't. I just think that it's sad that that kind of promoter is defining a musician by the award that they've won. And we in life know that some people, it's about what they can contribute, not the accolades that they've received. Folk music isn't about accolades and about awards. It's about what your message is and what you can contribute. And I feel like this whole idea of, oh, well, I'm going to book this band because they've just won this award, so they're going to sell out. I think that's sad. I think it should be, I'm going to book this act because I know that they have a message to say and I know that they've got good music, they've got good repertoire, they've got good rapport with the audience. Not, they've won an award, so they're going to sell out. I think that that's sad. And of course, I understand they need to make a profit. I get that. That is totally fine. But a little mix would be nice. And also being nice to young musicians on the phone when they call you up on their own volition. Like, because the thing is that if you stamp someone on their way up, when they're finally at the position where they can turn your club down, they're probably going to do that. And I think that's so sad. Like, you should just be nice. Like, get with the times. It's the 21st century. If you're only going to book acts that you have physically seen in the flesh, you're closing yourself off to a world of acts, like a world of them. Just get on YouTube. It's one click. Like, I know that some videos are not representative, but more and more people are doing live videos to show representation. So there's no excuse anymore. Don't be mean to young musicians or any musician or anyone.
No, you're absolutely right, and it's kind of like a weird parallel with that whole, like, well, your elitist education is the only important thing, or like it's the same kind of dismissiveness. I think especially young people do experience, and I dare say young female performers find very often that's the case, and it is sad. It's really sad. But now you're on this kind of thing with the Scots language, trying to promote that as an official language. You mentioned earlier that it's not right now. So
yes, so Oor Vyce, which means our voice, was founded by a lad named Jack Kapner, or Capner, depends how you want to say it. And he has been, quite vocal about getting Scots recognised for quite some time now. There's, people have been trying to do this for years and years and years and years, and it's just been kind of overlooked. So in 2005, there was something called the Gaelic Language Act, and that was introduced to protect Gaelic, to give it official recognition and to open the doors, basically, for further funding and support. And that's brilliant. That's done brilliant things for the Gaelic-speaking community. However, in 2011, there was a census which asked people in Scotland, do you identify as speaking Scots? And at that time, 1.5 million people said yes, they speak Scots. But then there's probably others who didn't tick that box because they weren't aware of what Scots was. Now, I have not been talking to you in Scots this entire podcast because I'm very much aware that the people that might watch this are not necessarily going to be from Scotland. And I feel like that is going to be a barrier. And sometimes, especially when I'm on tour abroad, if I'm introducing a song which is completely in Scots, then I owe it to the audience to give them an English, introduction. So a lot of the time, the more and more international work that I do, the more that I'm not talking in dialect or in Scots, which I can make peace with because I understand that everyone needs accessibility. If I'm, for example, in a rural part of Italy where people's English aren't necessarily too good, then if I start speaking away in Scots, then it's just going to be an extra barrier that we don't need. The songs are already in Scots. So a lot of the work that I've been doing has necessarily been internal, trying to figure out, like, where do I speak in my own dialect? To my mum, to my dad, in the familiar home, that's fine. But if I go into a board meeting with, the committees that I'm on and all that, I feel like talking in Scots, people think I'm like a hick. Like, people think that I'm lower class, like I'm not smart, I'm being rude, I'm speaking in slang. So it's really sad that I can't be myself in all of these different contexts. But when there's a thing called the Scots Language Awards, which the first one happened last year, all the people who either write in Scots, present in Scots, there's actually people who translate. Their job is to translate things like the Gruffalo, Peppa Pig, Harry Potter into Scots. So we had a big meeting, a big conference about Scots, and then the Scots Language Awards. And for the first time, everyone in the room was just there for the exact same thing, the exact same cause. And that kind of sparked this whole renewed effort off. And I felt comfortable just to be able to chill out and just not be self-policing or self-censoring what I'm saying, which is really good. I like that. I mean, when I'm singing, it's very much in full Scots or Doric, but I feel like there's places and situations where you have to talk in English. So part of the Oor Vyce thing has really helped me in being able to kind of campaign at the fact that right now, a lot of the time, kids are not speaking the way that they speak at home in the playground or at school because, for example, maybe teachers aren't too sympathetic to Doric or Scots. Kids in the playground will speak to each other in Scots and Doric, but then when they're in the school, they have to speak proper. Because I remember even being at school, if you were talking like that, the teacher would think you're just being rude. And that was so annoying. So being able to fund education efforts to make sure that kids realise that, no, they're not working class because they talk like that. That's just their identity. That's how they speak. That will go a long way for boosting kids' confidence and what they can do with it, because Scots language, you can sing, you can tour the world singing in Scots, you can be a very successful author writing in Scots, like Lewis Grassop Gibbon, Sunset Song, all that stuff. You can translate Harry Potter into Scots. You can go around the world teaching Scots. On TV, Alistair Heather is never off the screen because he's doing Scots documentaries or he's working with the BBC. Scots is a thing that there's a whole industry out there, yet it's not an official language. You can study Scots literature or Scots song or Scots language, but it's not a real language. So we need that to be recognised as a real language, not just to assure that what we're doing means something, but just to give it legal status. If 1.5 million people believe they spoke it in 2011, I think that way more people speak it now. So Oor Vyce is simply the campaign to get the Scottish Government to give the Scots Language Act legal recognition. It's very confusing because it comes with standardisation. People in Aberdeen speak different from people in Shetland. People in Shetland speak different from folk in the Borders. So all these people will be debating, oh, well, this is how you speak in Scots. This is the right word for that. This is how you spell it. Scots, there's many different spellings for the same thing in Scots. And it's very, very difficult to decide what's the correct standard Scots. Same with Gaelic. People from Harris would say, well, this is our Gaelic. And then people from Skye would say, well, no, this is ours. And our Gael people, Ross-shire people, Gaelic, there's so many different versions. So we will have to face that, but that's cool. I think that, why would you, Welsh is a language.
Yeah.
Gaelic is a language. Ulster Scots is going to be recognised as a language.
Yeah.
Yet Scots isn't. That's really, I think that will be the catalyst. Not to be too political, but we're trying to depoliticise Scots. So some people on Twitter will say, Scots, that's just an SNP thing. That's just a nationalist, dirty nationalist thing. But actually, we are trying to develop a cross-party group on Scots in the Scottish Parliament, where we have, people from all over the political spectrum who are passionate about the cause. There's a brilliant, this is the only ever time I'm going to say this sentence. There's a brilliant Tory politician who is very, very passionate about the Scots in Doric. He is called Peter Chapman. He's an MSP, and he frequently talks about Doric and Scots in recognition of North East culture in the Parliament. So his politics aside, he's a Tory politician who is passionate about Scots. So that's a tick from me. However, in Northern Ireland, of course, Ulster Scots is very politicised, very much politicised, which is a shame, because we're working hard to make sure that we're depoliticising it so that people from all over the spectrum can identify. So when the Oor Vyce logo was designed by myself, and we decided that we would not have a saltire in it at all. This launch that we had a few weeks ago was like the launch of Facebook, Instagram and Twitter of it. However, a Twitter profile existed beforehand, which had a saltire in it, royal blue. And we decided as a committee that we can't actually have that as our logo, because some people who are passionate about Scots are not necessarily going to be under that flag. They might not be nationalists, and that flag basically it's too much to do with the 2014 thing. So we need to separate it so that people who are like Labour supporters, who don't want Scottish independence, but they like Scots language, to support us too. Yeah. So there has been a lot of thinking about like depoliticising it, making it accessible for everyone, because there's people like some Geordies are quite passionate for the Scots language because it's very similar to the way that they speak, like bairn and I and new and like, so I think that making it more accessible and like not having it like a raging, it's not an SNP thing, it's a Scottish thing. And that's how we should go about it. But it's just so contentious, like so contentious, especially with what's happening with the Ulster Scots Language Act. I think that will catalyse our act. I don't think it's going to be long now. It just seems right. If you're going to have a Scots Language Act and Ulster Scots Language Act, then you kind of need a Scots Language Act. You can't have one thing be legitimate, but the source of that thing not be legitimate. Because, of course, we know that Ulster Scots comes from Scottish and English people being uprooted to Ulster. So we can't legitimise one thing without legitimising the other thing.
Yeah.
It's really, really tricky.
I find it weird that there is this very proud tradition of Scots song, right? All these songs are you're singing in Scots, as you say, you're touring, you're playing songs and singing them in Scots. But when you speak in your own language, then you're seen as something, different, like, I don't know, you're lower class or something like that. And that it just seems a very strange separation to me, that, that Scottish people are very clearly proud of their song tradition and so on. But then on the other hand, they don't want you to speak with that same thing. So I really hope that it isn't a long struggle for you to
I
be
think
able to get that.
it's very historical. Like my dad's generation, like if he spoke Doric in the school, they would get like the belt, get punishment. I guess it's quite similar to like the Welsh cross. Like people would have to carry the cross on them if they spoke Welsh in school. But I think it's just really sad. I mean, to me, this is just champagne problems. I mean, if I'm comfortable, I'll speak however I want, wherever I want. If I'm really tired, I'm not going to talk in perfect English anyway. But it's all in different situations. If I was in the pub in Huntly with like people I went to school with who are like farmers or whatever, and they're like, you know, it's nice, I'm at home, I'm amongst my own people, that's cool, then yeah, you feel way more comfortable. But if you're down in London at like a meeting with X, Y, and Z or whatever you're doing, you want to be taken seriously. And unfortunately, I feel like talking in that dialect or in that language, you're not necessarily taken seriously. And being a young female on these committees is already hard enough, let alone
Sure.
being someone who's interpreted as like, you know, chuchtery.
And so when we're talking a bit about the tradition of song and everything, and I think it's important to discuss the language. But you're also been recording. I've seen a few sort of singles have come out again in Scots. So whereas the Dark Turn of Mind, it was, you were singing a lot of more sort of relaxed English singing. Is it something you're trying to go back to now? Is your next work going to be back very firmly in that Scots tradition?
Who knows, really? I don't know. I decided that I'd do the Baltic Street and Bonnie Lass of Fyfe because I really like those songs and I really wanted just to record them anyway. And it just so happens that those songs, I mean, Baltic Street was written by Violet Jacob and put to melody by Carol Pryor. That was written in Scots anyway. There's no English translation to that at all, period. So that was in Scots anyway. There wasn't like an active, oh, I better redeem myself by doing some Scots singles. I just thought I just would do it just to show that I can do both. Like, it's not one or the other. You can do bits and bobs, you know, whatever. Paul Brady, the Irish singer, he had heaps of trad repertoire out, and then he did like kind of rocky stuff. I mean, I think that it's kind of cool to be able to do both. Jane Turriff is a source singer from Fetter, I can't remember, but part of the Northeast, and she would sing all these ballads and all that with a harmonium. She was a traveller singer, and then she would sing like country and western songs. Like, this is like back, you know, ages and ages ago. Margaret Bennett showed us this in class. I think that being able to do a few different things is cool. So Bonnie Lass of Fyfe was also a single that I put out this year, and that's in like Doric, like really strong Doric. And the reason for that is that I have known Bonnie Lass of Fyfe since I was really young. The like original one, the pipe march version. But a few years ago, Sam Kelly recorded this in English on his album Pretty Peggy, and I totally loved it. I thought what he did with it was amazing. I loved the chorus. I loved the melody. However, some of the verses were not what I would have done. So I thought I might take this chance to credit Sam and also redo it how I would necessarily do it, being from the Northeast and having the verses that I would have. And of course, I looked into it, and this song, which is, I mean, Bonnie Lass of Fyfe is based in Fyfe. Like, there's no argument about that. There's versions that's like Pretty Peggy of Derby, but like the original version is archetypically placed in Fyfe. There's no arguing. You know, there's Money Alas in the Girio, there's Money I've seen in the streets of Aberdeen, but the plural, like, it's placed there. Right, that's it. There's no arguing that. However, if you look to Cecil Sharp's English folk songs of the Southern Appalachians, it's there. But it's Fenario, which of course gives way to Bob Dylan's Pretty Peggy, in which he places Fyfe in the, you know, Fenario, this made-up place. However, it's quite interesting because I don't understand how that's an English folk song. Archetypically, it comes from Fyfe. That's where it's from. And Sam has done a great job at interpreting that. He's gotten the lyrics perfect. He's gotten the place names perfect. Most people in Scotland can't pronounce Geary right. And he's done it. He's done it really good justice. But I thought, I love his version, but I'm going to put it back into Doric. And I'm going to add in verses that I feel should be there. But it's also really funny because Bob Dylan recorded this on his first album when he was really young, but then toured it with the exact same melody that Sam uses. And that exact same melody is in the Southern Appalachian collection. It's went round in circle. It's literally went round in like a big old circle, and I feel like I want to record that because it's a great version. I've tipped my hat to Sam Kelly, saying I love his version. He's done a really good job. But it's mainly to show the universalism of the song. I really wanted to record it, but I feel like there's not a place for it in like a new album. I feel like there's just not. So these singles are like, just I want to put them out there anyway. Yeah, you know, when like something just doesn't really fit with what you kind of want to do now. I think I'll probably do some Scott songs in a new album or something, or maybe just try and interpret new things. Or there's actually a lot of Scott songs which are written in English.
It's interesting that you mentioned Cecil Sharp and the Appalachian Songbook, and this is something again that I had a chat about with Nancy, was that, you know, the way that it's kind of a colonial view that he went over there and collected songs that came from Scotland and Ireland and England and so on, and then kind of brought back their versions instead of really like looking into, well, what's their tradition and what do they have. But anyway, different story. But I think when we first talked, we were talking about some Scottish songs that I was investigating, and then we got to talking about Come Away From My Window, and I was talking about the Peter Buchan version, and we had an interesting conversation about that because obviously the scholarship has been slightly questioned on that.
I think that a lot of his stuff was elaborated and made up to try and please who he was trying to, you know, write for. I've actually got his Peter Buchan Volume 1 collection up on my laptop right now, and yeah, it definitely feels like explanatory notes. I feel like he was definitely adding in stuff there. I just don't think it's very accurate. A lot of the time, some of these collections were published for like the reigning nobility of the towns, or like Duke and Duchess of Gordon or whatever, and like they were molded to try and please whoever they were trying to please, and that means that we don't have a very accurate representation of the living tradition at that time. So it's a timestamp, but it's not accurate. And there's of course been books which have had chapters in it. I think there's one, it's just called The Peter Buchan Controversy, which is quite funny. But that's what you get with written down stuff. You're better looking at, you know, things like Tobin Dulcus, Kister Riches, the Vaughan Williams, where like you're hearing the source singer. You're hearing it straight from like the horse's mouth. And often in like these archive recordings, the reporter is like coaxing, you know, answers out of the source singer, but a lot of the time they're dealing with very feisty people, you know, traveling communities or whatever. So you're going to get the truth or something closer to the truth, rather than a book that's been, you know, people have like fretted over it.
Yeah, and it's been, you know, in some cases like sanitized or altered and so on. It's definitely good to get it. It's in, one thing you mentioned earlier on is that, you know, there's a bit of a folk revival going on in Scotland, and it's interesting to me because really like the catalyst for the British folk revival and the English folk revival was also in Scotland. A lot of people came from that time and came up around in that scene. I think in Edinburgh, people like Bert Jansch and June Tabor and Hamish Imlach and so on. So it's interesting that Scotland once again is kind of reviving this traditional style of music.
Well, I feel like, I mean, I don't like the term revival because it suggests that it was dead, whereas the idea of the carrying stream, have you heard of the carrying stream? That idea is a far more better solution than to suggest that there's been, you know, X amount of revivals occurring. I feel like the carrying stream is that idea that the tradition is consistently ebbing and flowing, and the ebbs and flows create those little kind of mini revivals or whatever. But it's the idea that tradition is ever evolving and moving forward and all that. And I prefer that term instead of the revival, because there's been several different revivals, but I feel like the Carrying Stream describes it better, because there's contemporary revivals and there's like, of course, the folk revival, like the 60s era type whatever. But I feel like that term, I don't know if it was Hamish Anderson that coined that term, not sure, but the Carrying Stream seems so much more fluid and like this, you know, movement of tradition. I like that. I do like that.
No, I think that actually sounds really a lot better than it started. But you know, it's good that there seems to be having a flow now. You know, there seems to be more of a recognition of it, and there's a lot of really great artists who are young and who are doing great work in it. Who's right now? I mean, if you're thinking about who's inspiring you right now on the scene, or even outside of the scene.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about like learning a new song, I'll probably check if it's been like recorded by like Jeannie Robertson or Lizzie Higgins or Lucy Stewart or Elizabeth Stewart. You know, that's probably like the main port of call I'd go to, because I know that if they probably recorded it, then it's probably a worthwhile song to learn. Likewise, I'll look at obscure stuff too. But yeah, those people serve as reputable inspiration. But I guess like I like a lot of different music. I like Casey Musgraves. I like Taylor Swift. I like, you know, whatever, which is more representation, like what my generation might like. I like Sierra Hull, bluegrass players like Alison Krauss, Molly Tuttle, like American-y bluegrass players. So more and more, I've kind of been looking over that Atlantic for inspiration. I mean, I don't like pop music that much, but it's like a weird mix. Like my iPhone or my iPod, it's like mental. It's just mental. It's just so random. So yeah, I'll look at like these source singers for inspiration, but also I'll probably look at this like younger breed of musicians for inspiration too. I like archive music because it's stuff that has been, but it's also stuff that's probably still relevant, and you can use it and mold it and to interpret it. I think that it's nice to listen to your peers and your contemporaries and see what they're putting out to get an indication of where the market is, or what's, you know, what type of music people are making, what they're listening to. But for me, finding a new song, I think it's nice to hear who historically sung it, and so you can compare their versions and maybe make one of your own. I always like to do that, because I never like to like sing a version of something which is just like, right, we've taken that and now we're singing it. I prefer to like mix and match the verses or the melody or whatever. Like even that Militif des Années recording, it's like a mix of Tom Spears from the Spears family and Gordina McCulloch. So like my version is like a mix of both of theirs. So I'll try to always make sure that I have a version which is unique to me.
You've obviously done a lot of traditional material and you've covered some things. Is it something that you're looking to write your own work as well? Do you consider yourself a songwriter as well, or?
No, I don't think I consider myself a songwriter. Maybe a songmaker. I don't know. I haven't written that much myself, apart from like Banks of the Tigris, in which I didn't even write the melody, or like Let Him Sink, which I didn't even write the lyrics. Like I feel like I'm more of a song interpreter than a writer. I just don't, I don't know, I struggle putting pen to paper, whereas if I'm looking like an old text, I can very easily whittle a massive song down to a very economical interpretation. So I feel like that's my strong point right now. I feel like some people say that writing from the tradition helps. So for example, using a traditional melody and using that as your springboard, but I'm just not, it's not something that I've really been ever good at. So I'll need to figure that. I'll have to work on that. But I'm certainly not a songwriter right now. No.
Cool. Well, I wanted to ask you one more question, and it's maybe a little bit kind of a jump to get to it, but you know, obviously this whole lockdown situation and all of these times are a bit worrying and a bit scary for everybody. And you obviously as a touring musician, you know, if clearly that's going to have a massive impact on your career and your finances and everything. But how have you been dealing with this whole situation? What does it look like, especially as like a young person? You've got, you know, seeing the world as it is.
Yeah, I just think that it's not been like the way that we portray things online is so different from how it is. Like, I'm not used to being in the one place for a long period of time, so I definitely get so spooked out and so low just being in this area of Glasgow in which I am living in right now. It's not a very nice area, but yeah, certainly I've taken it really, really hard. Like, I really struggle to be motivated. I struggle to produce things, to be creative. I struggle to get up in the morning. Like, I feel like my identity is what I do as a musician and as a person. And I feel like that's been stripped from me. And overnight, my entire world and my plans for this year and my money, I'd literally be, well, the money that I don't have has been literally pulled out from underneath me like a carpet. And I think it's just sad because I had this surgery in December on my knee, and I didn't work from most of December and most of January, and did a few things in February. So I was already in a bit of a precarious situation. So I was beginning to get back to work in March. I managed to go to Spain in March,
Mm-hmm.
and the week after, Spain is in lockdown. Like, if I like, it just all happened so quick. Like, everything just got punted, and I'm not
Mm.
being very creative because I just don't know when it's going to get better. Like, it's the conversations that I've been having with various committees and boards I'm on, like, is very depressing. Like, how venues are going to reopen and how people are going to sit, and like the capacity. And it's not even as simple as rescheduling all my work for next year, because next year Brexit happens, so we don't know what's going to happen. So it's just like a never ending bad things are happening for the arts, because right now, like, we're also missing, if we're not touring right now, then our PRS payments next year is going to be rubbish. So it's like a 2 year
Yeah.
implication for artists that the government just do not consider or care about. Um,
Mm.
and it's just been a very, yeah, confusing time, but also like self-blaming, like, oh well, if I just had a normal job then I wouldn't be in this awful situation, or if I just did a proper degree then I would be much better off right now. And like, you know, some family members not quite understanding, like,
Mm.
I'm just, it's almost like blaming yourself for your
Yeah.
decisions that you've made in life. And like, feels like all that hard work that I put in for years and years and years just meant nothing. Like, it's just been crumbled overnight. And it's so horrible because being alone for like this amount of time, you know, I've managed to see some friends now that is kind of eased
Mm-hmm.
in Scotland, but we as musicians and artists are rather social beings. I mean, most of us are. I like being alone too, but it's more like the implications on musicians' mental health is probably not just mine, but everyone is going to
Mm.
be really bad, because musicians, like, almost they suffer from very different types of issues that the normal walking person might not.
Yeah.
You know,
There's.
feelings of imposter syndrome and
Mm.
feeling low and not good enough and whatever. And
Yeah.
to add loneliness into that factor is not going to be good, because I'm sure a lot of musicians, they enjoy meeting up with musicians for rehearsals or in the pub or doing gigs or traveling, and like all that's gone. And I feel like the arts will be implicated emotionally as well as financially.
Yeah. 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 I think there's a lot of baggage bound up in being a musician, and some of it does come from other people in the way that they see us, and they don't value the arts, and they don't really value. They just think music is something that they should get for free on, you know, and it's just a background thing, and without thinking about the implications of the people who make it. Uh, but there's also this, as you say, yeah, there's this terrible like self, this idea that you're trying to keep yourself going and trying to be positive about what you are and who you are and all of that. So I very much identify with that feeling of trying to be creative in a situation like this is really difficult, and yeah, it's
And
very easy to
sometimes
get
music,
despondent.
like music might not even be a catharsis for some people. Like, I know so many musicians who like don't feel emotional catharsis by listening to music, myself included. Sometimes I just get stressed because I'm like, oh my goodness, they're amazing. What am I? Like
Yeah.
it's crazy. I'll need to get over that. But yeah, it's kind of like, and also especially in Scotland, like so many health things, like mental health provisions, have just been cancelled. Period. So if any musician was receiving treatment or help, or anyone, then that's been cancelled too. So, there is things like Help Musicians have done this Music Minds Matter thing, and the union have always posted to where you can get mental health provision. But if you're already in treatment by, the local authority or whatever, and that's been cancelled, then where do you go to? Because there's so
Yeah.
many things that is just wrong right now. I mean, resources are not being put in the correct places. People are struggling to access health care and also mental
Yeah.
health care, which is really important. And the whole idea
Yeah.
is that after COVID, the next big thing that will come is, of course, a financial crash, but
Yeah.
also a mental health crash.
I think
And
you're
I
right. Yeah.
don't think we are, as a country in Scotland or in the UK, equipped to deal with that.
Yeah. I think you're right. There's just going to be this kind of collective trauma with the whole thing. I mean, even for myself, I feel it. I'm very fortunate that I live in a country which had very few cases and which is now opening a lot. But the mental stress of even going outside, and just being back in what somehow looks like normality it's very, very difficult. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people are going to be affected like that. And yeah, I don't know how you get back to normal without those kind of services. But
I just think that right now it's everything has kind of happened at once. I mean, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, yes, but we're also in the middle of extremely important protests about Black Lives Matter, really important things. And people are, leveraging the two. I mean, I've read some awful things on, my Facebook feeds, particularly in rural Aberdeenshire, that people are blaming protesters for the inevitable spike in COVID. And basically, I mean, it's our right to be able to protest, to be able to have
yes,
justice and freedom, and standing up for our communities and our BME communities. That's so important. Yeah, I'm sickened by the stuff that I'm seeing from
yeah,
people from, in particular, rural Aberdeenshire. They are very conservative people, perhaps, but that does not equate to just being full-blown racist. So we're stressed about many things right now. But the idea that, I mean, I'm feeling ashamed of where I came from because of some of the comments to the protesters, and like calling them X, Y, and Z, and calling protesters selfish.
yeah,
Selfish because we're
yeah,
protesting inequality. Are you
yeah,
joking? So, I
yeah,
mean, a lot of people are probably feeling very under by all this
yeah,
too. I mean, people are saying it's not happening in Scotland, we don't have this in Scotland. We absolutely do. I mean, we have it in several different forms in Scotland. It's awful. And I think that all of this, the COVID thing, and all of the horrible atrocities that's happening in the UK and in America and everywhere, and the upsurge that's happening right now, you know what, it's horrible. And the thing is that if we didn't have COVID right now, then there wouldn't be so many anti-protesters. I think what would happen is that people would just be like, right, they're protesting. But right now, people are saying, but COVID, they're going to cause more
yeah,
COVID.
yeah,
So people are protesting the protests, and it's
yeah,
shocking. Like, and there's just thugs. There's people out there
yeah,
just trying to fight with the
yeah. They
police.
just always want to get out there and cause some mess. Yeah,
I mean, Glasgow yesterday had riot vans everywhere, and it's just all of this collectively is just pushing down on people, and especially if you're engaged. If you're not engaged and you don't watch the news, or like you just don't care, you're acquiescently going through life, then you're probably not going to be affected that much. But if you are engaged and you genuinely care about what is happening, who's struggling, like what are the implications of this, like you're probably going to carry a little bit of that brunt on your shoulders too. Or maybe
yeah,
guilt because you can't go out and protest because you're scared of getting COVID. There's probably people who really want to join the physical protest that can't. And it's just
yeah,
like the
yeah.
whole world has
That's
just
true.
gone to just gone to rubbish, and it's so sad. And there is a collective trauma happening because we have so many different things going on right now, and it's just like, I just want to get out of the city and go somewhere rural and just hide from it all. But that's not good, because that's being in denial and not tackling the whole thing face on. But it would be nice just to get away for just one wee night.
I mean, honestly though, I think getting away is, yes, it's a privilege, you know. Yes, it's you know, there are people who face the struggle all the time, but I think you've also got to be kind to yourself, you know, as a person. You've got to be, it's okay to give yourself time to, you know, to be okay, and because that way you can help more. I think by I find it myself. It was just like this massive anxiety all the time about things, and then I get stressed because I can't change it, because I can't do anything. But sometimes if you just go and have a wee nap, then it's actually okay, and it's good for you to do it. So you know, I think I definitely would recommend people just trying to take a little bit of time for themselves and for their own mental health as well.
Absolutely. And I think the whole like pandemic thing has been a struggle, in the fact that like the first week or so when everything was just being cancelled, I was like, no, I cannot reply to emails, I can't do this, I'm just going to sleep all day. And it took me like a month to put away my suitcase, because since I was maybe like 16, my suitcase has never been away. It's always just been open, waiting for the next trip. And that was like a sense of grief, like mourning. Yes. And like I just couldn't face, I was just like, I'm just sleeping, that's it, I'm going to bed. And then I felt guilty for not being productive, and then I had a total panic, and I was like, okay, Patreon, ballad workshops, streaming, and now I just feel exhausted and like burnt out, and I'm like, I shouldn't be. This should have been a great time just to have streamlined my life, because previously it was just like this, up, down, up, down, up, down, sleep. And this would have been a great time for me just to like get routine, get healthy, but it's not. But also I have to face it and agree that it's okay to not be productive. It's okay to like sleep in, whatever. Like if I constantly just measure my worth on my productivity, then I won't be worth much because I'm not productive. You know, sometimes I'm like so keen on like engaging, and then other days I'm like, nah, I can't reply to that. I just can't face mailing people or mailing back. I just want to be alone. And I don't know if everyone else is feeling like that, but I feel like a total shambles, you know. I feel like that's very much like an artsy thing, like within every art form, I'm sure people feel like that. But it's just so overwhelming. It's scary.
Yeah, I think certainly almost everyone I've talked to about this who is a musician or an artist feels like this. You know, they just feel this overwhelming sense of like, oh my God, everything's gone crazy, and then trying to deal with your own mental state and your own mental health. But what I was going to say to you is, you know, I think now more than ever, you know, we do need music, and we need that feeling, because it's something that can be very unifying. It's something that can be very comforting. And so I'm just really grateful to have musicians like you out there who have put things out that I can listen to, and that make me feel better, actually. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, I think that is, we need music, we need drama, we need art forms, we need that, and we need the UK government to start appreciating that, because I feel like of course, apparently we have borrowed millions in order to do furlough, but like other countries are taking care of their arts a little bit better than we are. And I think this might be a historical thing with the UK, that we just don't care about our arts. But I've received more help from the Scottish Government's Creative Scotland Bridging Bursary Scheme than I have from the UK government. Like, I understand that, we're devolved and we get our money from the UK anyway, but like, it's really sad that our union doesn't necessarily care about arts. For example, French musicians really get good help. They get good help. I mean, in Ireland they have basic income. How cool would that be? That just everyone gets the same. You know. Yeah,
they make a big excuse about, it's costing too much. We're having to spend all this on, or whatever it is. But then we still go and waste trillions of dollars on Trident or some bullshit. So.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. I'm just like, the amount that it costs, you know, there's a big figure going around being like, oh, it'll be like 69 something, but then Trident was like 300 million or billion. Yeah, I mean, there is money. This has actually showed that there is money to go around.
There is always money.
And there was always money, and this austerity, you know, cutting education and cutting all that. It's like, like we should just be able to fund the NHS properly. I mean, someone argued with me on Facebook the other day when I said, look, we have the right to protest, we should be protesting. Someone said, yes, but what about everyone else's life? So I was like, what? And then they said, I bet you would stand outside your window clapping the NHS, yet you're supporting these protests. Two completely different things. And I came back to them and I said, no, what I do, instead of clapping outside my window, which is not helping anyone, what I do is vote for governments, which isn't going to freeze the pay. I feel like everyone is misaligned our actions. Like, by you clapping outside is not going to stop the pay freezes that the Tory government is imposing. However, you voting for a proper government that's not going to do that will. But I'm not going to stand outside clapping and then vote for Tory. Like, you may as well just not do anything. So I think, like, right now it's difficult because all my social media feed, I've just been unfriending people. Like, as soon as I see something, I'm like, no, can't deal with that, gone. And instead of doing that, I feel like I should be having the tough conversations with them. But then that gets you into arguments and fights. But you know that you're on the right side of history when you're fighting them. But then they get their friends involved, and like it's all of a sudden you're back in high school and they're ganging up on you, and it's like, this is exhausting.
Well, thank you so much, Iona, for sharing your time with me and giving me your thoughts. And I hope this lockdown will, you know, soon end and things will actually get better. And again, thank you for your music and for sharing some time with me.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I feel like we've chatted, we've reinvented the wheel. It's been nice.
That's good. Yeah, great. Okay, thanks very much.
I get up to Effort for to get a fee. I fell in with Jimmy Brun, me him I did agree. Come a high, come a do, a high come day. I come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. I fell in with Jimmy Brun in the year of 91 to gang him and cause second paid and be his own man. Come a high, come a do, a high come day. I come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. When I get him to geese, I took 'twas on an evening clear, and in a booty or a house the gaffer did appear. Come a high, come a do, a high come day. I come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. I'm the master o' the place, and that's the mistress there. You'll get plenty cheese and plenty bread and plenty more to spare. Come a high, come a do, a high come day. I come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. Well, I sat and ate the cheese and bread till they'd a done me stare, and then I thought that it was time to gang and see my play. Come a high, come a do, a high come day. I come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. When I get to the stable, my pretty 42, oh, fex they were a dandy pair, a chestnut and a blue. Come a high, come a do, a high come day. I come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. To the blue, but long, long our lives in time, a pity got me through. Come a high, come a do, a high come day. I come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. The two she was now working wheel, she wouldn't throw the fire. The gaffer says I better yen at the smithy take him far. Come a high, come a do, a high come day. I come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. When I got him the new clue, she pleased me Uncle Wheel. I thought she would be better again, she had a cotton wheel. Come a high, come a do, a high come day. I come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. I rocked a month or twa, wee Uncle Little Clatter. orders did lay down. If I did the like again, he'd pit me frae the tune. Come a high, come a do, a high come day, high come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. We hae a gallant Bailey, aye Wallace is his name. He can fair head up the Kyve any tax do not came. Come a high, come a do, a high come day, high come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. We hae a little Bailey, aye Jemison's his name. He's gone out to effort far, he's raised enough of fame. Come a high, come a do, a high come day, high come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. He's gone doon to Charlie Watts for to he had to rob. Long ere I could do the laddie couldna stand. Come a high, come a do, a high come day, high come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. We hae a gallant kitschy lass, aye Simpson is her name. For to tell her pedigree, I really would think shame. Come a high, come a do, a high come day, high come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. She dresses up on Sunday, we had heat up off the level. Teeth that oh the ivy that would scare the very devil. Come a high, come a do, a high come day, high come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. Now my song is ended, I won't sing any more. If any be offended, ye can walk outside the door. Come a high, come a do, a high come day, high come a diddle, come a dandy, oh. Come a high, come a do, a high come